What's up everybody, welcome back to the channel, and in today's video we're going to be talking about the avatar state once again. It's been a minute since we talked about it, but we are going to talk about it again because we've seen a lot of talk on whether the avatar state is the same power level, or is it weaker now that, you know, Korra lost to past lives, or is it going to be stronger? The answer is very complicated, but in today's video we're just going to go over it and kind of see what my thoughts are on it. So, and just jumping right into it, like in universe, right, the avatar state was meant to be a defense mechanism. Something that just activates when the avatar is in danger or when they're under extreme emotional distress. As the show and Avatar, went on, the writers kind of wrote themselves into a corner because the avatar state slowly began turning into this, if Aang cuts it on, he basically wins the entire fight. In each and every fight he could win, right? That became a problem narratively because if Aang could solve every major conflict just by activating the avatar state, then there would be no plot, there'd be no tension, there'd be no story. So they had to write the show in a way that prevented Aang from simply activating the avatar state, which is why, the whole show is with him trying to master the avatar state. He had to go through the steps of going through the process of mastering it. And then with the Legend of Korra, things became a little bit more complicated because the show, it suffered from major production issues from Nickelodeon. We know that they didn't have the same freedom, they didn't have the same circumstances that they had to write Korra like they did with Aang, or Avatar regular in general. We know that the amount of episodes they had, it was shortened. I think Avatar had maybe like 20 something episodes per season. Korra just had around max 10, maybe 10 to 12 if I'm being honest. I can't really remember. But originally the creators were only approved to do one season for Korra, which is the reason why book 1 ends the way that it does. And then, with Korra activating airbending, energy bending, she gets the avatar state at the very end. That's the result of Nickelodeon and their rules for the creators. And at that time, that was supposed to be the end of the series. But then as the show began, being renewed for another season, book 2, they wanted to expand on the avatar lore, which is the reason why we got Wan, we got Rava, we got Batu, and the origins of the entire universe. But once again, the creators thought that this could be the final season, so they had to end it with the way that it did, repeatedly through Korra's production, along with the limitations placed on every single episode. And because of that, Korra's story structure ended up being very different from Avatar's long narrative. Now, in universe, this is where it kind of gets a little tricky, because in universe, when Roku explains that the avatar state, when he's explaining it to Aang for the first time, I think it's like season 2, I think the episode is titled The Avatar State. He says that it's a defense mechanism designed to empower you with the skills and knowledge of all the past avatars. Now, that wording is important because basically what Roku's saying is that the avatar state equals the skills, the knowledge, and the techniques of all the past avatars. Roku never says that the avatar state grants the current avatar, the combined raw power of the previous avatars stacked on top of each other, right? But he instead emphasizes the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities that are accumulated throughout the avatar cycle. So now we have to look at the rest of Roku's sentences, where he says the glow is the combination of all your past lives focusing their energy through your body. Now, in present day, this sentence is not all the way correct. It's not wrong, but it's not all the way correct. Well, why is that the case? Well, in universe, this might have been the original thought, but this was later expanded upon in the Legend of Korra, because in universe, right, we talked about out of universe, but in universe, Roku didn't know the true reason for the avatar's glow when he was teaching this to Aang. We'd have to go to Legend of Korra to find the answer, because we see that in the show that Rava is the glow that is seen when every avatar goes into the avatar state. She is the power and the energy that the avatars receive, and the techniques and knowledge that every avatar gets is from the past lives. With those established, we got the in-universe and we got the out-of-universe explanations. Now, why does it seem that Aang's avatar state is stronger than Korra's? Or why does it speculate that Aang has the most powerful avatar state? Well, the biggest reason is presentation, the way it looks, right? And this also stems from the production out-of-universe reasons. But going into the in-universe reasons, we see throughout Aang's, show, most of the time his avatar state is unstable, it is emotional, it's uncontrolled, and uncontrolled power always looks more explosive. Anytime someone doesn't have control over their powers, it's always going to look more powerful than when they do control their power. And we see that when Aang enters the avatar state, we see the oceans, they rise, the earth shakes, the entire landscape just gets demolished. But that's because the avatar state is essentially taking control over Aang. That's not how it's supposed to function. Whereas in the Legend of Korra, of course, with production issues in mind, but in universe, for most of her series, Korra is a fully realized avatar. I would say she technically becomes a fully realized avatar at the very end of the show, but quotes around like fully realized avatar, she basically is. So instead of turning the avatar state into a giant, uncontrollable transformation, she uses it efficiently in show universe, right? She uses it tactically. She uses it to amplify her bending abilities for enhanced mobility, a stronger bending output, faster reactions, short bursts of power. It's less visually dynamic, but the other avatars, they do the same thing. We see that, like an example is when Roku, he destroys Sozin's palace. We see it when he's trying to calm down the volcano. We see it with Kyoshi. We see that when she is creating, Kyoshi Island. It isn't this grand, it is grand, but it's not this uncontrolled version of the avatar state. It's more controlled, it's more precise. And we even see Aang do this later on at the end of the show when he uses the water from the ocean to put out the fires from the firebenders of Sozin's comet, right? And it's beneficial for an avatar to do this because it's less risky, because if they die in the avatar state, that's it. It's over, which is why Aang's use of the avatar state is not a good representation of how it's supposed to be used. Well, the avatar is not supposed to remain in the avatar state for a prolonged period of time. And fully realized avatars tend to use the avatar state more like a controlled enhancement rather than a berserk mode. So in a sense, the avatar state can actually look less powerful when an avatar masters the avatar state. So now with that in mind, we have to go into, does Korra have the same amount of power as the past avatars? Is hers weaker, or is hers perhaps stronger? And ironically, I feel like I'm in the minority. I'm part of the very few that think that season 2 Korra has the best in-universe avatar state. We don't see her do so many, crazy things with it, but we know that based off of early established avatar lore, that she has the most combined, the most refined, and perfect avatar state, if you will, because she inherited the powers and techniques of every avatar before her, including, Wan, Yang Chen, Karuk, Kyoshi, Roku, Aang, every avatar before them. On top of the fact that she also reconnected with Rava, which makes her avatar state technically, it should be the strongest that we've seen in the universe. But after the event of harmonic convergence, we see that Korra's connected to Rava. It becomes even more unique. While she did lose these skills and the techniques of the previous avatars, what she actually gained was a prime Rava, the actual source behind the avatar state. And arguably, that makes her avatar state stronger than ever, which creates an interesting paradox, right? Book 2 Korra, finale may have the most completed avatar state in history because she possessed the library of knowledge and Rava, but post Book 2 Korra may have lost that experience, but gained the most direct spiritual, accumulated knowledge from Rava herself. So the avatar state, it's not weaker by sense. In some aspects, it's less refined, but it's not weaker. It ended up evolving. But that's all that it is. I don't think that the avatar state has necessarily weakened, but I think it has changed. It's not the same. And I think this is probably good for the story going forward. It presents more of a challenge to past avatars, which can lead to some interesting stories, whereas the writers would have to write themselves into a corner, try to figure out ways that the avatar cannot use the avatar state. Whereas if we are going this new route, especially with Avatar 7 Havens, they don't have access to that past, library. But what they do have, they have Korra from now on, or supposedly they do have Korra from now on. In Korra's book, her personal novel kind of says that she might not, be able to speak to the next avatar. But I feel like for story reasons, it makes it a little bit more interesting. So that's just my take on the avatar state and if it's grown weaker or not. If you didn't know, like some of the production issues of the Legend of Korra compared to the avatarthelastairbender, I hope you learned something. But what do you guys think? Do you guys think that maybe the avatar state is stronger or it's weaker? Is what I'm saying not making any sense, or it's false? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And until next time, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.